Yeah,
That's
and it
exciting.
all has its place because, the neophyte needs that conspiracy because there's a lot of paradigm shattering that needs to go on. There's a lot of conceptions like Santa Claus that still need to be corrected. And conspiracy theories, which that become rapidly facts, do that. But that's all neophyte stuff. Initiates
Yeah.
start thinking about their body and how that plays into this, the diet, and how that plays into this raw energy, like bad music versus good music, open windows, feng shui, those kind of things. That's initiate. And then the adept is finally saying, after all of that preparation and that growth, now I'm ready to go out here and to assist some of those initiates and some of those neophytes. And that's the process. And it's no different from how trees grow. And then we start to see
Absolutely.
that in the entire reality, what gives us a vision of what is to come, because we're only experiencing a very small part. As they say, hey, you're using 5% of your brain. What they really should have said is that, hey, you only can see 5% of the reality. And there's this other 95% out there that's waiting for you to open it up. But to do that, it's like it's all a part of it. Like the whole path in itself, it's just so intrinsic from the city that you live in to the street that you live on, that it's all working a formula. Because this is another thing. If a person ever questions themselves and says, well, why me? There's so many other people that can do this. They have, better teeth, or they have a better conversation, or they went to school, or they have more money, or they're more likable. And they can go into that because that's how they're measuring whether this is for them or not. The truth is that we're talking about formulas here. We're talking about real alchemy. In order to build bridges into spaces to where there's no bridges, because first of all, building bridges to places that there's already bridges, there's really no use for something like that. So that's why you never want to become limited by your peer group. Again, you never want to become limited by your peer group. You never want to get stuck in that Facebook circle of people that are all talking about the same thing because they're still cycling the same video. You want to keep your unique and your inventive aspect of things. And that actually requires you at times to sometimes just go against all of what is being said. Oh, we're on this side, they're on that side. And it's like, well, what is the side anyway? It's just stretching the mind. And what this does is it's like a fish that gets a bigger tank. You can actually get bigger, and you can also develop applications that people haven't even thought of or even dreamed of yet. So there's a big part of this that it's new. Just remember, it has a new feel around it. And every person has a different fingerprint to prove that they have a different spin. And when you put your spin on it, just because it doesn't sound like what someone else is saying, that means that's actually great. And in marketing, they call that the niche. They call that's what your whole thing that you need, and that's going to separate you from every single thing else, so you just don't blend into the canvas. And so a lot of people have found the success, because I look at a lot of different stuff. I look at Kickstarter, I look at YouTube, and I look at all different things. And what I find is that, see, this is also not about how you look. Like a lot of people, they feel a little bit discouraged about how they personally appear. And then they think, oh, if I just look like her, then I would be so amazing. And the thing is that when you watch Hollywood and you watch all these different things that go on to where people are magnetized to people, it has to do with character. That guy that gets on the YouTube, hey, YouTube, hey, what's going on? And then he smacks an egg in his face, 1 million views. And it's because, obviously, you don't got to go smack an egg in your face, but the character, if the character is not electric, to
100%.
bond with the magnetic side of the person's consciousness, it's like, and that's this whole thing. It's electric and it's magnetic. Even studying spirituality a lot gives you a lot of divine feminine energy. But when you now need that masculine energy, because that divine feminine energy is going to yearn for that masculine energy comes from the physical reality. So now the person wants to see the result of their spiritual practice manifesting in the physical reality. We call that manifestation. But the truth is that manifestation does come across when a person's dialing into all these different aspects of consciousness, these codes and these different things. And now they got to bring it into the physical reality. Now they have to basically find its mate, create this matrimony and this marriage. But what are we talking about? Relationships again. So
Wow.
everything boils back into that same thing. So if you become a master at relationships then, and there's a lot of work on that, like I'm just quoting it, I study stuff myself even about it all the time. But the truth is, if you want to master something, Master relationships, because those are things that they're like panaceas for everything else that you're doing. They're going to cure every single problem that you're facing in other dynamics in your life. But it also means, hey, don't just get dictated to. Don't just go buy a bunch of books related to it and then feel like that's a big part of accomplishing it. All that stuff is to help you actually act it out. And all the tests, they come all the time with all the people that are around you, the things that you're involved and engaged in. So be prepared then. What I'm saying is be prepared to make the change. Now, for me personally, it's a bit easier because I'm on a zodiac sign to where I can change like night and day. I've literally woke up, and even with consciousness, it helps you more with that because you find yourself having to stay up to point and to pace with how this whole thing is moving and what it's willing to teach you if you're available. So in that whole thing, we have to realize that if you can get to a point to where you stop getting stuck, that you realize that the only thing that is guaranteed is change, then this puts you in a position to have that manifesis, to have a true metamorphosis. And so we have to get prepared for that. And, I always search for ways to adapt to that more. Like I learned that people have a tendency to be able to do that if they go and, let's say, tackle something that they never really liked. Like if you don't like deep water, go do some snorkeling, start playing around with it. There's different ways and different techniques. But just remember, the faster you can change is the quicker, if you want to use that term, you can get to where you're looking to go. If you're not where you want to go, it means you need to change some things. If you don't like changing anything, you're not going to get to where you need to go. So this could be almost like a knock on people's forehead sometimes, especially those that are a lot more grounded in the reality and feel more comfortable when something is established around them. They have a hard time getting out of that mode, but they have to remember that what's true, and this is how I conquered a big part of this. What's true? Because a lot of times we have a feeling that we're going to leave something behind. And we're going to regret that. Many people that actually are grounded, that's how they function. It's like, well, I'll regret if I leave or if I move on. But the truth is always remember, if it's true, it's going to be wherever you go, because that's how truth really is. So even when it comes to, and this is how spirituality helped me understand something that generally you would deal with on a physical level. In spirituality, there becomes a point where you keep climbing the ladder, and then all of a sudden you get to a door. And you don't know what's on the other side of the door. And the energetic potential is so high, you know that it could pretty much equal anything. Death, you never come back, whatever. And you can keep going to that door for a while and never decide to go through. For a lot of people, this is actually getting out of the body. But what happens is that I realized that whatever is really true that I'm experiencing in this reality is also going to be on that other side of the door. And that's what truth is. And everything that's not true, all the falsehood, and as I say, when it all boils down in the illusion, what will be remaining is the truth. And so in that kind of confidence and using that as like mantras, because those are facts, that's grounding yourself in the facts. So if something doesn't go right with that kind of concept, that means the entire cosmos is not going to function properly. So that's the power of the order. And remember, another quick tidbit here. For the conscious broadcaster or conscious person anyway, right now in 2016, there's a strong side of us that's rebellious. There's the rebel. Because we've had to become the rebel in order to escape the juggernaut and the military-industrial complex and the machine and all these different things that go on in the reality. So there is that rebel side. But we have to also realize that when you truly understand spirituality and the components of metaphysics, there's a lot of order there. So if you pull that rebellious concept into the realm of order, like where crystal geometries and frequencies and colors and wavelengths and octaves all must be precise in order to get the manifestation working right, then we kind of miss what needs to happen. So just remember that there is an order to this, and the strength in the order is when you are looking to accomplish something, and this is adepthood now. Now we're in the fields of the adept. There's a time and a place for everything, really. If you're looking to do something, you simply find the resonators for that, and you surround yourself with as many of those resonators as possible so that way you can manifest it. So what we find is in the order, like there's a color for it, there's a crystal for it, there's a tree for it, there's an animal for it, there's a place latitude and longitude for it. There's a time of the parallax from each year. So there's so many components that's what they call the ritual, that you can find that all correspond to what you're looking to accomplish. The reason why you can move with such precision and such truth as an adept is because you're functioning on the system of order that everything has to function by. It's a higher law. So they have these lower laws, like, what goes on in the courthouse and what goes on in those kind of arenas and the rules that they have at school and those kind of things. But then there's this higher law that supersedes everything. And we can never forget as spiritual beings that we're to train ourselves, like lawyers have to do in the law library, on this higher law, so that way we can be more precise and we can be more accurate with our endeavors. And that's key, because it can mean the difference between success and failure. If you're doing something on one day where that's exactly opposite to what should be done, then you may not find success. So the power in this sometimes, and I remember in the beginning when I jumped into this, I was like, you know what? It's whatever I want to do, whenever I want to do it, blah, blah, blah. And I started realizing that I had no structure. And that's what I was, it was working for a while, but with no structure, when it's time for people to depend on you, okay? And this is the big thing. When you don't have structure, you're the rogue, you just basically got a backpack on your back and a couple pair of pants and you're drifting. It's very hard for people to depend on you because you're not really a strong foundation. So even though you may think your message and what you're presenting and all that is very sound, it's not, because it hasn't grounded itself yet. So the truth is that we look for the success that we can achieve in life to really becoming the divine masculine, divine feminine, which allows us to be a foundation. And this foundation makes us basically to where other things can grow and they can prosper. And this allows people to believe in what you're saying, to trust what you're saying, because they're seeing the proof of it. And sometimes it's so simple. Like I said, it's when you turn the camera on, if there's a Wendy's cup right there, don't be surprised if everyone has a hard time believing your message about dieting because you had your friend's Wendy's cup. It wasn't even yours, sitting on the counter. So this kind of thing is like,
wasn't yours.
Yeah, sure, right? Sure, you didn't eat that Blizzard. But the thing is that just getting to the point to where you do watch what you're doing. That's why I say, be here now, be present. And that's a big thing.